Watch a modern combat sports match, and you will inevitably see elite athletes knocked completely unconscious by a seemingly light grazing punch. Yet, if we rewind to the late 1800s, bare-knuckle brawlers routinely survived grueling 70-round wars without mouthguards, headgear, or padded gloves. They rarely got knocked out, possessing what appeared to be virtually indestructible skulls. For decades, we've been sold a lie that having an iron jaw or a glass chin is nothing more than a genetic lottery ticket determined the moment you are born. The truth is, facial bone density is highly malleable, responding aggressively to environmental inputs. By dusting off the forgotten training journals of early pugilists, we can uncover a lost system of biological conditioning. These men knew exactly how to trigger physiological adaptations that literally turned their faces into living, shock-absorbing armor. So, what changed? Today, we have completely outsourced our physical protection to synthetic gear. We rely on thick helmets and heavily padded gloves, convinced they are keeping us safe. But this outsourcing has created a dangerous illusion. By removing the natural mechanical stress our skulls evolved to handle, modern safety equipment has secretly lulled our biology into a state of deep structural fragility. The real culprit behind our shrinking jaws is hiding right on our dinner plates. We consume hyper-processed soft diets that require almost zero mechanical effort to chew, starving our craniofacial muscles of the resistance they desperately need. This widespread muscular atrophy causes a complete collapse of the kinetic chain connecting the skull to the torso, leaving our brains structurally defenseless. When a punch lands, the danger isn't a broken bone. A knockout happens through rapid, violent rotational acceleration. The skull whips sideways, forcefully twisting the brain against the brainstem. To stop this, we have to look at an 1892 discovery by anatomist Julius Wolff. Wolff's law dictates that human bone actively remodels, becoming dramatically denser and stronger in direct response to the physical loads placed upon it. You can see this biological feedback loop in action today. Modern indigenous tribes and early industrial laborers display remarkably wide, thick mandibles compared to the narrow, fragile skulls of modern urbanites. Their facial structure is entirely forged by continuous environmental stress. A punch to the chin doesn't just hit bone, it strikes a devastating anatomical lever. If the anchoring muscles below are weak, that lever violently whips the skull sideways, instantly shutting down the brain. Modern science reveals a striking equation to stop this. Every single pound of increased neck strength drops an athlete's concussion risk by 5%. A massive neck acts as a rigid anchor, safely dissipating kinetic energy down into the torso. Early fighters instinctively knew this, utilizing brutal unassisted neck bridges and weighted harnesses to forge their neck muscles into thick, biological shock absorbers. But they also practiced the lost art of extreme mastication. Bare-knuckle brawlers gnawed on tough dried meats, fibrous roots, and raw pine resin to build sheer facial mass. This constant resistance deeply hypertrophies the masseter muscle, forcing it to pull aggressively against the jawbone. That daily mechanical tension triggers Wolff's law, physically expanding the bone's width and density. Without this constant structural stress, our soft modern agrarian diets are literally shrinking the human skull. To rebuild this lost density, you must reintroduce tough, single-ingredient foods into your routine. Chewing dense meats or utilizing mastic gums safely stresses the facial muscles, forcing the attached bones to thicken and grow. But dense bone is entirely useless if your mouth is open. A freely hanging jaw is a terrifying vulnerability, where even a light tap can dislocate the temporomandibular joint and instantly sever consciousness. Early pugilists survived this by mastering a biomechanical structural lock. By biting down on leather strips, they fused the lower mandible to the upper skull, turning the head into a solid block of bone that safely transferred impact forces. Heavyweight Jack Dempsey perfected this by chewing on pine while strictly breathing through his nose. Forging the habit of nasal breathing during strenuous exertion naturally develops this subconscious, protective clench. Yet, the ancients went one step further with an extreme conditioning secret: controlled microtrauma. Much like Muay Thai fighters deadening their shins, historical bare-knuckle boxers systematically tapped their jaws with wooden mallets to deliberately create bone-hardening microfractures. Medical science validates this extreme historical practice. When bone sustains microscopic cracks, specialized cells called osteoblasts rush in to lay down dense new layers of calcium and phosphorus. Over time, this literally calcifies the jawbone into a heavier piece of organic armor. While you should never strike your own face today due to the severe risk of brain trauma, it proves our skeletal frame is highly malleable to the exact demands we impose. To safely apply these biological rules, you have to rebuild the foundation. Shift immediately to strict nasal breathing to continuously engage your facial muscles. Pair this with a dedicated neck training routine 2 days a week, using resistance bands or a harness to safely thicken the trapezius and sternocleidomastoid. Next, turn your dinner plate into a structural conditioning tool. Incorporate thick steaks, raw carrots, and daily sessions of sugar-free mastic gum to safely hypertrophy your masseter muscles. Finally, master the mechanics of daily posture. By pulling your chin back and lifting your chest, you optimally stack your heavy skull directly over the cervical spine, maximizing your neck's natural ability to absorb and deflect unexpected kinetic energy. But there is a dangerous limit to pushing this biological machinery. Obsessively grinding your teeth or chewing tough gum for hours will not build an iron jaw. It will only lead to severe joint degradation. You must treat craniofacial conditioning with the exact same intense respect and the exact same recovery protocols as heavy barbell lifting. An iron jaw was never a genetic lottery ticket reserved for a lucky few. It was always engineered. While modern comforts and synthetic protective gear have temporarily lulled our natural biology into a fragile state, the ancient blueprint for immense physical resilience is still resting dormant right now in your DNA. Human biology is never a static sculpture. It is a highly responsive living organism. Ultimately, your skeletal framework will adapt, rebuild, and become exactly as indestructible as the environment it is forced to survive in.